Okay, world building, let's talk about it. I feel like with many games, world building is really not talked about a lot. Actually, I'd probably go so far as to say it's sort of being made less of a focus with newer games. Which to a lot of people saying that probably sounds off, but here's the thing. When it comes to this video, there's two major examples I want to focus on for world building. Arknights and Limbus Company for two reasons. One, most of the games I play nowadays are gacha games, and most of the games I talk about are gacha games. A depressing existence, I know, but the second reason is, even aside from the stigma of gacha games, these two actually have some of the best world building I've seen from games, period. And that's mainly helped because they're live service games, Limbus also having two games prior to it to build up the world. But what I've noticed is that some newer live service games, mainly gachas, actually not caring too much about the world and just focusing on specific characters for whatever they build up. Main reason being, why the fuck does it matter to build up an entire place in the game's world when you can instead just spend the time investing in an easy to like character and rake in the cash that way? Or go the Brown Does 2 route and Jesus fucking Christ. But because Limbus and Arknights have some of the best world building I've ever seen, I want to talk in depth about them and what makes them work, why they're a masterclass, and what they do to make their world work that other games don't. But hell, aside from that, this is just a topic I've wanted to fanboy about for a while, so this video is pretty much a self-indulgent excuse to do that. Thanks, bye, intro over. So, Arknights, there's about two ways I can show why its world building is peak. One involves me sitting back and doing a boring analytical breakdown, which personally I would rather be violently unmade in this corporeal realm than to do something that bland, while the other involves me rambling on about the lore like a madman, which perfectly shows just why it works. So I'm gonna do the second one because it's way more fun. Now be prepared for a rant, but this rant is the best showcase I can give of the world. Arknights has an entire world map for the setting of the game, Terra, and all the places on the map are actually different. Like the difference between Columbia and Sargon is in generic RPG Town 101 versus generic RPG Town 102. The geography, cultures, and races of the characters from them are largely different. Like for example, Columbia is mainly inspired by America. Big corporations have a lot of power and are looking for whatever scientific breakthroughs they can have, which is why technology from Columbia, especially anything from the military, is seen as some of the best. They're a superpower in the world and some coups may have tried to happen. But Sargon on the other hand is, instead of being this big industrial area, very diverse. There's some places ran by royalty and all that, but the rural areas are just tribes and the technology is... Backwater is a bit of an undersell. I mean, dear God, some fucking fish gods, don't question it too much, pulled up to the tribes one day and dropped their fucking rock mixtape on them, and that shit was so revolutionary to them. It was like seeing a light bulb go off for the first time. It was so significant to where they started to idolize the song. But that's how backwater the place is. It's muddy as fuck, old school as fuck, and hell, even the people who live there are crocodiles, so it's much different than America Light version. Which, and actually, thinking about it, it's a muddy backwater place with crocodile people. Sargon's basically just fucking Florida, isn't it? Okay, maybe that wasn't the best example I could have used for talking about differences. Instead, Lithuania. Let's focus on that. It's based off of Germany. No, that one pretty significant point in history you're probably thinking about is not a thing in Terra. I mean, yes, they did have a dictator, and yes, he may have done human experiments. Okay, damn, this video's off to a really bad start. But Lithuania's culture is mainly shown in music and the importance they place on it, and their love for music is weaved into how much they've explored arts, basically magic in the world of Arknights. And the best showcase of that is the... It's a German word, so forgive me for what's about to transpire. The Guldenskats, that is a piece of music made from Originium Arts that is Lithuania's national anthem and binds everyone of the country under one nationality. And that's honestly an undersell. The Golden Movement has had, over years, more and more added to it from Lithuanians to where it helped mold the culture, morals, and even the politics. And because for countless years this same Song of Arts was built up, it became nearly impossible to fully perform due to the length, which shows how important the song was to the entire country, Lithuania, built off of 10 nations, I mean essentially nations, probably closer to something like states coming together, all holding a copy of the song, all under that same banner. However, Lithuania didn't remain as 10 states in total, because in the year 1967, Syracuse, imagine Italy with the weather of Britain and it's pretty much run by the mob, split away from Lithuania to become their own sovereign nation, and as an act to show their sovereignty, they ripped apart their copy of the movement. So basically imagine if every state had their own copy of the Declaration of Independence and California wanted to become its own country, so they publicly ripped it to shreds. As you would imagine, that does not sit well with all the other states a part of Lithuania, which caused a war due to that act of treason, and the Golden Song was broken. Because of this, Lithuania was in a state of chaos, until the Witch King, the dude that later goes crazy and maybe does human experimentation, don't question it too much, rebuilt the song. He literally just walked in and fucking soloed that shit. The most complicated song in the history of the world, and he himself rewrote it, rebuilt it, and recognized Syracuse as its own sovereign nation. Now, because Syracuse split off from Lithuanian culture, they were kind of left off on their own to really market an identity, and because of this, some other cultures found their way into Syracuse. Like, their laws and all that were really inspired by the Columbian system, but their faith was also heavily influenced by Laterano. What is Laterano? Imagine the Vatican. It's a hyper-religious nation mostly inhabited by the Sanctum. Unsurprisingly, them bitches got halos and wings. Now, there are other races in Laterano, but they're mostly not, they're not outright discriminated against, but they do get the vibe that Sanctas are kind of just put on their own pedestal above them is sort of how the situation's looking. And the problem with that is that the main race of Laterano that aren't Sanctas are Liberi, from Iberia. Yeah, they were the most creative with the names, but a big part of that reason is because Laterano borders Iberia, and much like Syracuse, Laterano religion has a large influence there. Now, off in the past, Iberia was on track to being a superpower. They were having a golden age, but one thing completely destroyed that dream: the profound silence. Where the Seaborn, which is a race of monsters that are a hive mind which evolve to whatever you fight them with, that has gigantic gods leading them, and in an alternate reality, wiped out the human race and evolved to fly to outer space to hunt even more, destroyed them. When the profound silence happened, the Seaborn tore through Iberia, aided by the Church of the Deep that wants everyone to be assimilated into the hive mind of the Seaborn, which caused Iberia's power on the global stage to dwindle. Hell, their strongest military force was the Navy, and now the seas are filled with countless Seaborn that can tear through their naval force. But the profound silence wasn't actually terrible for everyone, surprisingly. It ended up helping a country called Siesta, in a way. Siesta was a trading outpost that was going to be used by Colombia to establish trade with Iberia using these seas as a way, but problem is, that sea was now filled with murderous fucking monsters that are always evolving as a hive mind, and the place they were trading to, they got fucked raw by those things, so they maybe ain't looking as lucrative as a partner as they were in the past. And because of that, Siesta used this leverage of not being the most useful asset to Colombia to retain their independence. Only problem is, Victoria immediately wanted to annex them, so they decided to fall back under Colombia's jurisdiction while still having their sovereignty. Now the question is, why did Victoria want to do that shit? Answer is, it's based off of Britain. That's pretty much all the context you need. Now the throne of Victoria remains empty, asterisk, because I don't want to get into spoilers, and a lot of Victoria's current state is main story spoilers, but they have a long track record of getting into wars. The most notable one being the Battle of the Four Emperors. It was a war against the Empire of Gaul, which is inspired by France, because they pissed off pretty much all of their neighbors. They hurt the trading routes of Ursus, which is Russia, and they helped Colombia get their independence, which pissed off Victoria because originally Colombia was under Victoria's rule. And then Gaul started to want to take Lithuania as a vassal state through political alliance and marriages. In turn, that helped fend off Victoria and Ursus from doing anything to them. Problem: the person they were trying to do this to, the ruler of Lithuania at the time, was the Witch King. Remember the dude that rewrote the Golden Song, the most complex arts in history on his own, pretty much known as the best arts caster in the entire world? Yeah, they pissed him off with that game plan. He thought it was an insult, and as a very measured response, he turned the Gaul envoys into statues and shipped them back to Gaul. Okay, he does a little bit of trolling. Then, as a result, Gaul declared war against Lithuania, yet even though the leader of Gaul, Corsica I, knew his opponent was the leader of Lithuania and the best arts caster known to man, he was kinda confident, because he knew the situation with Syracuse's independence caused some internal turmoil. And Victoria got double penetrated after their wars with Colombia and Iberia didn't pan out the best, and Ursus was about to be busy with trying to invade Kashmiris. Imagine Poland with more dubstep and a lot of knights. Now, this would be the 10th invasion they've done against them. A bit much, not gonna lie, but whatever. Means their oppositions were busy. So, perfect time to invade. Hell, he even got some casters from the Sarkaz royal court. They're fucking all strong as hell. Perfect time to invade. So yeah, the Witch King dropped a fucking catastrophe on Gaul's fleet. Basically, imagine like a Category 10, EF5, whatever terminology you want to use in layman's terms, imagine the biggest fucking tornado possible, and he dropped that on them. And that tornado also drops gigantic chunks of originium that gives you rock cancer, which when it affects you and you die, because you will die, it slowly kills you, your body explodes and gives other people that rock cancer. Now this is a natural disaster in the world. It's so devastating to where nations put their cities on nomadic platforms so they can actively flee catastrophes and not have everything turn to dust. Hell, people are employed as catastrophe messengers just to say when one of those is about to hit, so they can have everyone run away as fast as they can, and the Witch King dropped one directly on Gaul's fleet. Yeah, cause of this, the war reached a stalemate. Then Victoria saw what happened and joined in against Gaul because they were still mad about Colombia and how Gaul was looking to constantly expand. Then Ursus also agreed to go after Gaul, which made the Battle of the Four Emperors. Ursus, Victoria, and Lithuania versus Gaul. Russia, Britain, and Germany against France, Victoria being led by the Duke of Wellington. Now, for whatever ungodly reason, the Empire of Gaul decided this was an amazing time to double down and keep fighting. He was somehow fucking confident. And on October 17th, the final battle of the Four Emperors happened. Here's a map detailing what was done in the battle. And in just 4 days, the rest of Gaul's forces were crushed and the Emperor killed. And the result, Gaul was wiped off the map. Their capital used to be known as the capital of Terra, and that was turned to rubble. Their culture, their history, language, technology became obsolete. 30 million Gaul refugees were left. Some died due to the barren lands or the internment camps they were put into. And Gaul's land was split up between the four nations. And that is the best example as to why I love Arknights' world building. And no, it's not because the Battle of Four Emperors was basically the Battle of Waterloo, but instead France couldn't come back after it. Now, I'm not saying it isn't based that terrorist France canonically got destroyed and forgotten by the world, cause that was based, but it's not the sole reason I love the world building. It's cause I was able to start talking about Lithuania and seamlessly, or at least I hope it was seamless, connect all of these different countries in Terra and say how they affect one another. I was able to waffle on about all of these different places, and when talking about them, they're so interconnected to where it's hard not to mention the others. And honestly, if I wanted, I could have easily done this with the entire world map of Terra. I could have took you on a goddamn Miss Frizzle magical school bus adventure if I wanted to. I just decided not to because of time. But that's what I love. It feels real in a way. The areas and nations in the world don't feel isolated from one another. It doesn't feel like, oh, for 100 years, X country did this and no one else ever once had a hand in anything they did. Because that's what a lot of stories fall into. When thinking about how to build up all of these different areas in their world, a lot of them think about that place and the vibe they want from them, which leads to those areas being built with only that area in mind. It's like they built the places in their world as very tall skyscrapers that are miles apart from one another, while something like Arknights is a city of fairly tall buildings right beside each other. Even if the places themselves are not as built up as locations in other stories, which, to be honest, not many other worlds have places as detailed in Arknights, but even if they weren't, the fact that they are all connected in the example I used prior makes the city seem much bigger than the sum of its parts, because those parts aren't isolated from one another. Instead, they're inseparable. Yet in spite of this, in terms of vibe and how they visually look, they're different as hell. You can easily tell all of the countries apart, but they still feel connected because the history of these fictional places cannot be removed from one another. It doesn't feel segmented, except for more isolated nations like Aegir, but there's plot reasons behind that. It all comes together to be a world that is greater than the sum of its parts, and it's fitting in a way. Yes, there's a lot of talk about wars or having plots to cause more, and if it ain't war on the table, there's gotta be some new political scandal to take the stage in geopolitics, cause yeah, Terra is by and large a shithole of a world to live in, and that is what makes it feel real. It's not, oh, we wanted to make the Vatican, so we made this place full of guns and crazy people legally bombing the streets. Instead, they did that, but also realized that since a significant chunk of the world also somewhat follows Laterano's religion, they can be used as a country to foster talks of peace with others, paired with how they largely stay out of wars, minus their wars with the Sarkaz, and guess what? Laterano is a good place to hold these summit of nations. Enter guide ahead where this happens. And this interconnectedness makes the plot of Arknights so much better, because when you play an event or main story chapter and something significant happens, you know that will in turn affect the world at large. Unless an event story is really isolated to how it is on its own, which some are, a lot of the plots having far-reaching effects in the world makes it feel real. And that, paired with literally an entire timeline about the history of Terra, with Hyperglyph even making lore books for it, shows why the world building is in a class of its own. And there is more to talk about why it cooks, but I actually want to switch gears to Project Moon's works. Yes, I know, it's me, Tsunul, the biggest Project Moon hater, actually about to compliment their games. Man, Oh, what a surprise there, ain't ever seen that one before. So Project Moon actually does world building in a bit of a different way to Arknights. Little preamble. These are the 3 games PM's made, they all share the same world. Now the world does feel very interconnected, similar to Arknights, but what makes it feel different is it treats everything like it's already existing. Now that probably makes fuck nothing in terms of sense, but here's the thing. In Library of Verona, a character called Malkuth says she comes from a nest with no color. Nests are the sort of big city of all these different districts, A to Z. Z isn't on the map, but it does exist. And anything outside of these nests are called the back streets. So when she says that she comes from a nest with no color, you'd expect like some general explanation to that, right? Yeah, you would have had to have waited some years because this line was never explained until Limbus Company, where you can see in T-Corp all color has been stripped away and people need to pay with time to return the color to objects. A lot more to dive into there, but moving on for now. But T-Corp and how their nest works was mentioned, though they never dived into it. It was said like a basic fact of the world. Oh, one nest just has no color, everyone knows this, and they didn't care to explain. Now, of course, that style of introducing the world isn't the bog standard. They do explain general world-building stuff from time to time, like the protagonist of Verona, Roland, telling Angelica about the world because she spent her life sheltered. And by that I mean she spent millions of years, thousands of miles underground being pretty much tortured, but, you know, minor things aside, Roland acts as the introduction to the world. And for Limbus, Dante has amnesia, because it's a gacha game, of course the protagonist has to have amnesia, but it also works as a canon way to introduce the world to the player. But it doesn't feel like stuff is popping up when we see it. The world is like they already have everything planned out and are just showing bits where it's relevant. That's not to say it's all planned out, because dear God, there's no way it is. We know they got some general planning for their works, but no way every single thing is fully mapped out. But hell, another example is Arcorp. In Lobotomy Corporation, they're just some rabbits that show up when you press a button and they kind of go gorillas bananas killing everything. There's a lot of them and they don't really dwindle in number. Couldn't tell you why, probably just a gameplay thing. Then Verona rolls around. Spoilers for the Arcorp section in it. All in all, not that important to the main plot of Verona. But it's revealed that the singularity of Arcorp is cloning. That is why they have a near infinite amount of soldiers, but to fuel this cloning they need energy, which is why they were at LobCorp's command, because they used their energy. They were on a contract. And that also explains why we could take them in Verona, because that was after LobCorp fell, which meant that they didn't get the energy from them to just overwhelm the library. It's little things like this where it feels like everything just makes sense. The world isn't only explained at a time where it's important for the plot and that's that. Instead, concepts are brought up and when they're mentioned, they might not actually matter. They're not entirely brought up as a talking point, but as something that exists in the world, and as times change, these little, mostly ignorable details make a lot more sense in the world. Sort of like a mystery box way to tell a story. I mean, the best example is how all of the games show the railroad tracks around the city. We do not know shit about these railway tracks or why there are trains running on them, but in every game PM has made, we've seen these same tracks, but the explanation is for the future. It's not relevant now. To some people, this can be a little off because, to put it simply, we just want to hear more. We got all these different places in the world, and after years, we still don't know what a good chunk of these places' singularities are. A singularity is sort of like a big piece of tech that has a corporation built around it. Which is also probably a good time to say, yeah, the world of Project Moon is a dystopian mirror of how capitalistic South Korea is, because that's where the company Project Moon is from. But all of these wings have some singularity they're built around. F-Corp has fairies that can unlock anything physically or conceptually. The newer G-Corp singularity is the ability to control the weight of an object. Maybe it can actually help take the weight off of me having to carry my fucking team in Marvel Rivals. The older G-Corp gave people insectoid augmentations. Don't think about it too much. J-Corp can lock or steal anything on a conceptual level, like locking someone's ability to speak about something. K-Corp's got some ampules that can instantly heal anyone. M-Corp has, okay, this one's a little weird. So they got something called Moonlight Stone, which basically protects your mind. Like any mental pain, it shuts off, and they can amplify a single purpose for you to focus on, or it can be a mental barrier. N-Corp has canned experiences, which when you take one you get to experience whatever is in the can. The most popular of which being the canned suicide feeling. Make of that either being horrid or wholesome, as you will. P-Corp makes objects able to bend instead of break. Boring, not gonna lie. T-Corp can control time. Major Sigma energy, much cooler than Piss Corp over there. U-Corp is known for their ability to keep food in stasis, being forever fresh, and the Resonance Tuning Fork, which can fuse two objects together into one, and can split them apart when wanted. And W-Corp is one of the most interesting ones that really show how the world ticks. Because as I said, the city is being held up by all these different districts, each of them having their own singularities that they revolve around, which must be kept as secret as possible, mainly so a rival wing doesn't steal their idea and take them out of business, thus causing the wing to collapse until a new one can take its place, but also because they may be exploited for business. Like, K-Corp uses video footage of tragedies to get this out of cry and then uses its tears, which are refined into the healing ampules. Then other wings started to pick up on the fact that K-Corp seems really interested in buying footage of tragedies, so they started charging them more for it. But the case of W-Corp is interesting. So a wing fell and their technology became known to other wings, the ability to travel to a different dimension. On its own, not much to be honest, but W-Corp still bought that technology and they used it in warp trains, which are trains that are so fast they'll get you to your destination in 10 seconds. Anywhere you can go, it'll be a quick and easy trip, and the way they do that is by teleporting them to a different dimension. However, to the passengers, the travel is not just 10 seconds. In fact, it actually takes thousands of years. But that brings up a new problem, which is when you trap people in a train for thousands of years, they will inevitably go insane. The most gruesome example of which being shown in Rana, where the passengers try to kill themselves but can't die. And learning of this newfound immortality, they start to hurt themselves just to feel something, some stimulation, anything to keep them from going insane. This may work for some months, hell if you're lucky even some years, but inevitably, everyone goes insane, to the point of making their bodies into flesh melded together and bits of pieces lining the bus as decoration. This happens on almost every single warp train, but to the public, there's nothing wrong with them. You go in, 10 seconds later, you're at your destination, no harm, no foul. That's because W-Corp's actual singularity is the ability to return something to its previous state. So long as a passenger's pieces are still in the train, they can be restored to how they were before the thousands of years, memories included. But then, why take thousands of years? If the warp trains can go into a different dimension and teleport people to where they need to be, there's no way it's gotta take thousands of years, right? And more importantly, why don't they age or die? That's because W-Corp uses a device from T-Corp that collects time, thus helping to power T-Corp's singularity, which includes the use of time. Those thousands of years are used as something to sell to T-Corp. They don't need to take thousands of years, but it pays them, and the passengers can be reverted to how they were pre-torture, so no information about how terrible they are comes out. Because of this, they have protocols in place for when colored fixers, basically some of the strongest fighters in the city, take their trains. And to the wealthy and powerful, information about how W-Corp trains are not the funnest is known. But because of that, they have stasis chambers in first class where the wealthy can pass those years by without being conscious at all. And guess what else? They got energy from L-Corp, and because it fell, they're not doing the best business-wise. But if they were to collapse, T-Corp would be put in a tough position because of their arrangement. And that perfectly shows the world of Project Moon. Corporations helping each other only if it's good for business, as they prey upon the population in any way they can, even torture. It's dark, it's gruesome, but I'll be fucked if I can't also say I can fully see corporations in the real world doing some of this shit if they are able to. Every aspect in the city feeds into its overall vibe, an oppressive place where profit and protection means more than a soul. Because of that, you have gangs spring up called the syndicates, most of which are run by some of the most insane individuals you've ever seen, either by having the rumblings of the city scrawl out orders for people to follow for protection, and if they don't, they're executed, or by having a book of vengeance where you never once let anything slide. Any transgression gets marked down there, and the person who did it hunted. Now, because these syndicates exist and terrorize people, fixes are also a thing. They're basically like syndicates, but considered the good guys, though I struggle to say most fixers out there are a beacon of morality, as to actually get help from them, you need money. Everything in the city is built around the same theme. Even though the locations may vary from a library to a mega corporation or the Great Seas, it all serves the same theme Project Moon wants to convey. But the most important thing is that individually, the parts still work. Man, I'm terrible at explaining. That sounds like a line ripped from Destiny's dog shit writing. What I mean to say is that there doesn't feel like a loose end in the world, minus the concept incinerator, which is a device that can delete concepts of things. I mean, they sorta helped handwave just how many holes that open up, but dear God, it just existing is whack, especially how it appeared at first for a comedy event. But that aside, and this also goes for Arknights, there's no individual part of the setting that feels like it is ripped from a different game. There are parameters set for the world and everything exists in them. Like for Limbus, guns are a thing. So, why doesn't everyone use them? Well, the head, basically the government of the city, taxes the fuck out of them because they don't want killing another person to be so easy. So using guns and buying ammo isn't the most cost efficient, which is what the entire world is built around, money, going back to the capitalist theme. And those that have a lot of money, they can get shit that's stronger than guns. It's little things like that, the various places in the world being actually explored, the fact their history is so intertwined, hell, the fact the places in them aren't just tropes, repeating for the millionth time, that actually makes these worlds feel believable. They didn't go through a checklist to say our world is X, Y, and Z and here is why you should care. They bring you through the world like a history teacher passionately speaking about what they love. In the case of PM's world, that history teacher was probably a sadist based on how fuck shit gets there, but to me, these little things are what makes these worlds amazing. They're believable because anything mentioned in the world is with consideration of what else is in the world. The places in them aren't built up with only that area in mind, and they don't fall for whatever generic trope people have come to hate. The world also isn't used as a plot device. There's no, oh, we need to go get the sacred hero's sword, so let's go to the village that only exists for the sacred hero's sword and nothing else. The people there exist for no other reason. And the overall theme of the story isn't broken for some self-indulgent want of what they want to make in an area. To me, someone who isn't really a writer, minus that one fanfic I wrote for charity, and maybe upcoming to 2, we'll see how this year's charity goes, but I wouldn't say I'm like an expert in the realm of world building. But I love these 2 games and wanted to just ramble on about why their worlds have had such an impact to me and why I love them. I mean shit, I've contemplated making some hour-long videos just going through the full history of these worlds. The only thing stopping me from making that is those videos are going to be like months long to make. So for now, I'ma just settle with this self-indulgent rant of a video.